When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast, Skeptic Studio, the interview portion of the Brainstorm Podcast. I'm Cory, and my panel tonight are Dr. Lisa.
Is that me?
Yeah. Brandon.
Hello.
Leo.
Hey there.
Angela.
Hi.
And the always amazing Soundmaster Dave.
Bachelor Dave, thank you very much. Bachelor.
Bachelor?
Yeah. I want my official academic title recognized.
Bachelor Dave.
So you're not single?
BA?
Well, that was my first. I was like, what?
Hang on, Dave.
What did I miss? I haven't been here in a while.
Okay, we're here in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan. And today
Still married, ladies.
June 8th, 2018. Tonight we're talking to Mandisa Thomas, founder and president of Black Nonbelievers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I guess a good place to start is the question everybody asks. How did you get to atheism? How did you start Black Nonbelievers?
Absolutely. Well, the first part of the question is I actually wasn't formally raised religious. So that's actually pretty rare coming from the Black community. It isn't completely an isolated experience, but I was born in 1976, and that was a pivotal time in the Black community in the United States where there was a lot of tendency to identify with, Black pride, Black history, Black culture, and really doing away with the, oppression and injustice. And so I was a product of that time period. And so I grew up learning a lot about systemic racism and injustice and Black history and culture. And I also learned early on about how Christianity in particular was imposed during slavery and was the catalyst for this oppressive system within the United States and the Black community in particular. And so the first time I identified as an atheist, or I said I was an atheist, was when I was in high school at age 14. I was very outspoken and militant. And someone asked me, was I atheist? And when I asked what that meant, I was told I didn't believe in heaven or hell. And I said, well, that sounds about right. But over the years, I had resolved myself to saying that I was spiritual. And for a while, I just didn't really think about it until I moved to Atlanta, where the first question that I was asked by many Black folks is, what church do you go to? Not even whether you're religious or not. It's just assumed. It is assumed, especially as a Black woman, that you're religious and that you attend church.
Did you ever say Hindu temple? Just
no, no, not at all.
Next time.
Yeah, I just tried to get off that subject very quickly. But over the years, I had come to reevaluate my thoughts because I particularly despise Christianity, and I reevaluated my thoughts on religion and my upbringing, and realized that I had a pretty eclectic and diverse background when it came to exposure to religion, and but that I ultimately realized that I didn't believe any of it. I mean, it was a process for me to still come to the re-identification as an atheist. But once I did, I sought to connect with other atheists in the Atlanta area. And so upon doing that, and then upon connecting with fellow Black atheists online, but of course with other atheists in general, I had experienced what many of them said they experienced when attending predominantly white meetups, that there was often an awkwardness and a sense of dissocialization, if you will, that they were often treated like, this trophy piece, like, oh, wow, I've never met a Black atheist before. But then also there's just this disconnect between, especially regarding the experiences and the differences of what Black atheists go through. And so I attended a meetup in 2011 and experienced precisely that. And the other Black gentleman who was there and I started talking, and we said, hey, we're in the Atlanta area. There has to be more Black atheists out here on the ground and in person, but perhaps there just isn't really a good way to reach them and help connect to the broader community. And so that's when Black Nonbelievers of Atlanta was formed, particularly as a means to get people engaged in person and to bring us out and increase our visibility and bring a better awareness to the understanding of the fact that there are Black atheists out there and also the challenges that we face. But then that our scope increased later in 2011 to just Black Nonbelievers. So that's in a nutshell of how we got started.
That's super cool.
Thank you.
I like that story.
Can I ask you, do you want to maybe speak to challenges you've faced specifically with respect to your identity as a Black woman but also being atheist? Like, I'm thinking, I don't know, is it, do you feel like people think it takes away from the people and culture that you're part of?
Absolutely, it does. The most recent Pew Research numbers regarding religion in the Black community show that now is 87% of the Black community identifies as religious. Even if that isn't particularly Christianity, they certainly identify with some form of religion. Now, there are historical reasons for that, as well as cultural and as well as some cultural reasons for that too. It's like I said before, as a Black woman, it's automatically assumed that we attend church. It's also just assumed that we're just religious and Christian, period. And so what that tends to, there are a number of things within the Black community, is that it seemed that, religion and belief in God is so innate within our, within our DNA that it has become hard to separate that with everything that the Black community has endured within this country and worldwide too. So there is this idea that if you are Black, there's no way you could possibly be atheist, because then you're rejecting your identity as Black. That's not something that Black folks do.
And that's bullshit. You should be able to believe whatever you want.
Well, not only that, not only is it bullshit because of that, it's bullshit because it just isn't true. There have always been Black atheists. Mm-hmm. There have always been Blacks who have challenged religion. There have been many, many iconic and groundbreaking initiatives created by Black folks in this country who were free thinkers and non-believers. But unfortunately, with the very strong religious identity of the Black community, that tends to be obscured. So, it's crap simply because that diversity within our community has always been there, but we have to fight to retake that narrative and redefine it.
Can you, I'm thinking, probably one thing you're working against is that there's so many prominent African Americans who are so overtly religious. I'm thinking like Martin Luther King Jr. I'm thinking like Oprah Winfrey, like Barack Obama. They're all overtly. Although maybe not Barack Obama, hard to say. But anyways,
yeah.
Can you name? I don't know any secular or non-religious or atheist African American people.
There aren't very many in present day who will openly identify. Yes, you have the late Julian Bond, who was a civil rights activist, was an atheist. I know that for sure.
Right.
Now, as far as who is, yes, so you're absolutely right. The very high profile African Americans in the United States and pretty much everywhere do identify as religious, which is why it's easy to mistake or it's easy to assume that almost the entire Black community is religious, because even if they don't necessarily believe it, they profess this belief publicly. Mm-hmm. And this is something that is all too common within the Black community, which makes it even more difficult because there is just this way of professing their belief that the belief that makes it very, very hard to, it's a hurdle, when it comes to that, when it comes to trying to combat this notion that there are, that there are atheists out there. I think, I would say, I would point to Jay-Z. I wouldn't say that he's atheist. I don't think he's ever come out and said that he's atheist, but if you listen to his music, you can make that inference. You can infer that he is non-religious or definitely not Christian. Right. So yeah, if you take a listen to his music, I don't think there's any. Now, I've been told that the comedian Monique is an atheist. I have not heard her. She's had Jeremiah Kamara on her show that she has with her husband. They have a podcast. Oh. And Jeremiah Kamara, who produced the documentary Contradiction, is very openly outspoken and openly outspoken critic of Christianity and religion within the Black community. And she and her husband had him on the show, and I've been told that she is atheist as well. But yeah, you can. Oh, also the comedian Leanne Lord is an atheist. She co-hosted Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh yeah.
So yes, Leanne Lord is atheist as well.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know. He doesn't seem very religious to me. Every time I've ever heard him interviewed.
Yeah, he will not come out and say that he's atheist.
But everything coming out of his mouth is sort of.
Oh, absolutely, yes. He even critiques religion, but he will not assert the atheist identity. So, I try not to begrudge him that. It would be nice if he said he was atheist, but. It is what it is there.
It just occurs to me that there are some really famous, prominent atheists. Like there aren't. I mean, most famous people do not profess to be atheists, but there are a few very prominent. I wonder. I think when I'm thinking about it, you think Ricky Gervais or I don't any of those people. They're all white. Hey, like, I wonder if it's like a white privilege thing. You get to use your privilege and use that as like a shield for whatever blowback you get for being an atheist. I sort of never really thought about it that way before.
Yes, most of and that's another thing, right? You assume that when you hear atheist, if you don't automatically assume devil worshiper, which is ridiculous, you just automatically assume white because most of the people who represent atheism are white. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that it's inherent to white people to be atheists, because we certainly know that there are many religious white folks too. However, when it comes to being able to assert that identity, there has been a privilege that white atheists have had for a long time in being able to do so, which has shown to be an advantage that other communities, particularly marginalized communities, haven't had. That doesn't mean that religion has gone without critique, as I mentioned previously, but it does make it a bit easier, and it's easier for the visibility, and it's easier for the assertion of the identity if you're white and atheist than if you're Black or like a Latin or Asian. So that there is, there is a huge challenge there.
Do you think that that attitude of, white people identifying as atheist more commonly, do you think that that's as a result of people of color have more pressing issues that they have to address and that they have to fight for? I mean, because there was the previous election, it was women of color that did the most to fight for it. It was crap, I can't remember who.
The guy who harassed 14-year-old girls.
Yes. That's that latest
about?
Election. There was
the judge
Roy Moore.
Yes.
Oh, that guy.
Yes. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. In addition to the church and state separation issues and combating the issues of the God concept, there are still a systemic issues in addition to that the Black community has to contend with. Now, for some, those issues take precedence over their atheism. But I contend that religion has always been the elephant in the room conversation, or it's been the elephant in the room. Okay. It presents a huge problem to the Black community, but no one wants to sufficiently address it for a number of reasons, and that's where the accountability comes in. The church is held in such high regard because of the supporting role that it has played within the Black community, and which at a time was very much needed. When there were laws that effectively disenfranchised and terrorized Blacks in this country, the church was one of the only sustaining institutions. So, but there is and also they've played a defining role with, even though I contend and others contend that they've hijacked the legacy of the civil rights movement. And that's a part of redefining that narrative. Now, when it comes to issues of race and other and other factors, certainly for many, I think there have been many white people who just have not taken that into consideration, that they've never had to think of issues in addition to, certain battles that we do. And I contend that these affect all of us.
Yeah.
What we are fighting for as atheists affects all of us. But also too, they go hand in hand. If we are concerned about human rights, all of these things come into play.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's just more things that affect our community that you wouldn't be affected by if you're a white person and you just never had to think about it. But it's high time that it's understood that there are extra added challenges that come along with being a person of color who is an atheist. There are other things that need to be considered in addition to.
Okay.
This is kind of a different topic, but just out of curiosity, the community or the organization that you work with, do you get a lot of participation from, I guess, newer immigrants from African countries or people who are not
raised in Christianity,
or who are not traditionally from, I guess, for the last couple of generations in the United States, or?
Actually, there are a lot of Africans here who are Christian. I'm not sure if there are a lot of, we get a lot of, we get a mixture of folks that participate with us. We have had some, we've had some Black folks who weren't born in the continent of the United States, participate and find our organization. But we get a mixture of people who have found us, and we have some white folks who participate with us too. So, if you read our website, we're open to everyone. We're just not exclusive to Black atheists or Blacks who are questioning religion. I would say though that most of the people who participate with us are about my age. So I'm 41. So we do have some students, but I'm happy to see the Black folks who are actually older than me participate with us, or even that are about a few years older or about in their 50s and 60s, because this is often the age group that is determined as not being able to change. They're not able to, they're stuck in their ways. Mm-hmm. So, they're going to keep that religion with them. And in fact, many of them do, but we have had a lot of participation from older Black folks who were either they were brought up religious. They even brought up their kids to be religious, but then they started questioning and they became atheists along the way. Or they were forced to go to church when they were younger and they never really believed, but there wasn't a support system out there for them. But now they know that there is one. So that's been a very, very rewarding experience to see that to connect with those who were already there, those because that's always been a focus of ours. It was that to help draw out those who who don't believe. I've never ever, I've never liked to paint our community and other Black folks as not being able to get it, because we do. And we get the question of, well, why are there so many Black folks who still believe, considering, the historical perspective and how Christianity was imposed? Well, there are a number of reasons for that. There are a number of reasons why many people still believe, but there are those who either don't and they're coming out of religion, and they need to know that there is support and that there is an organization that will help them navigate through that journey.
Something I'm curious about is the relationship between the Black atheist community and the quote unquote broader atheist community. Have you encountered like any negative backlash for organizing almost on your own?
Hell yes. Do you mean from the broader community about why our organization exists?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Oh yes. We've been accused of being racist. Why does there have to be a Black non-believers? What if there was a white non-believers? We should all just be one homogenous community under one umbrella because we're all atheists, and we should, this is just separating us. This is dividing us. We've gotten, and we still continue to get that too. Yes, there has been some backlash for that. And interestingly enough, I remember the first time that we were asked about that, and I was a bit surprised that of the very, very vitriolic nature and because I thought, well, we weren't doing this to separate ourselves from the community. Right. There was obviously a problem here. Mm-hmm. There was and there still is underrepresentation of people of color in this movement. Mm-hmm. There's no getting around that. And obviously there's a disconnect here, to say the least. There's obviously something that the community isn't doing to connect with more people of color, like more Black folks, to bring them out. And some of that has to do with the dynamic of the Black community. There is something about that, and then it's still relatively new, the broader movement. There are still people finding it. So it's still very, very new and young. Even I have seen a lot of growth in the past 7 years that I've been involved. And I'm happy to say that part of that is because of the existence of Black non-believers. But yes, absolutely, there has been some backlash but most of the backlash just comes from people who are online, they just, they don't necessarily engage people in person. You do have some folks who are very idealistic. They think that, they don't think that there are any issues pertaining to things outside of atheism, which just isn't true. So yeah, I've definitely seen that over the years, but we've been able to convey the reasons why and have some people understand. But not without there being such sarcasm and snark and some pushback first.
Some people might just kind of get defensive about it, like, well, I've never seen racism in our community, therefore you don't need to exist. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people take it personal.
Oh, yes. And you know what I've noticed? I noticed that when I have a tendency to look through people's profiles. I'm pretty nosy on social media. So when I see a white person complaining about the existence of a Black atheist organization, I often take a look through their friends list. I take a look at how many people they may have, like on their Twitter pages. It's almost usually next to none, and they definitely don't have any Black folks on there. So this is often a wake-up call, and it could also be a guilt trip because they may have never had to either deal with Black folks, or they've either never cared, or they feel threatened by the fact that there are more of us out there and they may have to deal with us, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because there's nothing wrong with us. So some people may be preemptively getting defensive, because they've never taken the time to think about it, and plus there may be just some Black folks that don't exist in their world and they've never had to deal with it. And this would be a change for them, which, hey, deal with it.
I feel like you can have a similar, like people always say, oh, well, if there's a gay pride parade, why isn't there a straight pride parade? It's the same thing, right? And it's like, and my sister's a lesbian. She says, well, when my relationship is perfectly acceptable anywhere and I can get married anywhere, and what my relationship isn't weird to anyone, and it's normal, and it's in all the media and all the songs and all the movies, then you can have a parade. That's what she said.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I had a Black woman accost me at a conference here in Atlanta, and she said to me, that she could not believe that I had the nerve to identify as a Black woman, as an atheist, in front of these white devils.
What?
So there is still, this correlation of, you're trying to be like those white people. Mm-hmm. You have betrayed us.
That's intense. That's intense.
Yeah, and so when you don't, when you don't have to deal with that aspect, you may be accused of being a devil worshiper, but how dare you go along with these white devils? There is just this thing that we are still. Do we wish we didn't have to deal with it? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So is she implying a room full of atheists was white devils? I don't know what sort of conference this was at.
Yeah, it was at the Atheist Alliance of America's conference back in 2015. Wow. But there was also a Women of Color in Ministries conference that was taking place at the same time.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
That must be fun.
That reminds me, like in grade 6 when Johannes made fun of me for seeing me in Kmart. And then I was like, wait a second, you were in Kmart too, because that's how you saw me. He's a jerk.
You've been waiting a little while to get that one out.
Yeah. Only 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, I was actually a little curious, like if people feel like being an atheist undermines your commitment to civil rights.
I have to. Sometimes it's like, well, there's often a defense. Like we just talked about how white people get defensive about the existence of a Black organization. It's often thought that, if you critique or challenge the church, or if you reject, the teachings of the church, if you reject the God concept, then you are rejecting the struggles that we went through. You are rejecting the legacy of the civil rights movement. somehow we're taking away from that, which I know I can't speak for all atheists. I can't speak for all Black atheists. I acknowledge the role that the church played when it was absolutely necessary. Right. I just don't make excuses for that anymore because we just can't. Now, when it comes to A. Philip Randolph, who was one of the key organizers for the March on Washington, was a humanist. Unfortunately, that aspect of his identity is obscured, again, due to the, of course, the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And there were also other humanists that were involved. The civil rights movement wasn't just a religious movement. And unfortunately, again, that is where the narrative gets distorted. That even if they don't think that you're against it, I think there might be an initial conception. But I think that the church has done a good job of doing itself in as far as, skewing morality, especially with more as many evangelicals or as many believers show, especially Christians, as many of them, show how much they are against, especially LGBT rights and other human rights issues. They are doing a very good job of damaging their credibility when it comes to morality.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Because when you hear sometimes you get these debates between an atheist versus whatever reverend or whatever, and the one of the best arguments you can make if the question is religion a force for good, people always point to the civil rights movement, right? Like it's always like, oh, look what religion accomplished there, like that. They take credit, right? Yeah.
Yes, they do, and that's why I said that. Yeah, definitely, religion and the church has. There were quite a few ministers. There were quite a few people in the clergy who, participated and who got involved and active in the civil rights movement. They weren't the only ones, though. And actually, there were many, it's been documented that many churches and religious leaders refused to participate because, it was very dangerous. Yeah. It was very, very dangerous, particularly for Black folks to get involved. And it was dangerous, period. So there was an understandable hesitation, but now that certain battles have been won, you just don't get to hijack the legacy of the civil rights movement, just because certain people are here to speak to it. They aren't here to speak to it.
So I want to know how, because recently you quit your day job to do activism full time. How has it been in the last few months since you stopped working during the day?
It's been very liberating for me.
Has it?
Yes, it has.
Awesome.
I was employed at my day job for just shy of 10 years. Wow. And 3 years in was when Black Nonbelievers was created. Okay. And, I also, in addition to taking activism full time, my husband has sickle cell anemia, so we have to tend to health issues regarding that. But the way things have progressed within the with Black Nonbelievers, also with my own visibility within the movement, I had to make a decision because, and I wrote about it. I created a Patreon. I think thank you for pledging. I hope it's been. I hope you enjoy it. But the thing is that I know for me where I wanted to take this and my personal growth and my professional growth in this movement, as well as the increased demand for me to appear, to travel and speak, as well as continuing to grow the organization. It was time. It became a point where, continuing to work the full-time job and have to take care of everything else. It was dampening my ability to increase the organization the way I need to, and devote the time that I needed to. And so it has been very, very, I needed to, it was timely for me to leave the job. If it was a place where I thought I could still professionally grow as well, perhaps I would have considered staying, but that was also another factor. But yeah, I was able to do what I needed to do there. But now the time had come for me to really just jump into activism full time.
That's awesome. Because you're already pretty visible in the community, and it'll be fun to see how much more visible you can be.
Yes, I am actually, definitely looking forward to how that will occur. I don't say can, it will.
Well, because there's been rumblings on your Facebook page of stuff that you've been hinting at.
Yes,
so it's very exciting. It's keeping us all in suspense for sure.
Yes, I am preparing to receive an award this month, which I'm also very excited about. Wasn't expecting that. The Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association is presenting me with their Person of the Year award.
Oh my goodness.
For 2018, and I'll be giving the keynote speech at their annual meeting. They're having their annual the Unitarian Universalist Association is having their General Assembly. I'll be participating in a panel on the history of Black humanism.
Oh wow!
As well as giving the keynote speech at the Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association. So I'm very, very excited about that. And
that is awesome.
I have a feeling that this will also contribute to the increasing visibility as well as add to my schedule. So I'm very excited about that too.
That is awesome.
The wheels are turning here a little bit.
Thinking hard.
How do we get you here to speak?
I've been bugging her since the last conference was over.
Yeah.
I've been in contact with her, so.
Well, yeah, it's actually fairly easy, Facebook is very, very good for. I've actually have solidified and secured speaking engagements just through handling details through Facebook inbox. It's just a matter of finding out when you would like for me to appear, whether I'm available. The terms are very, very flexible, travel arrangements. I'm very, very, again, I pride myself on not being difficult to work with.
You've been very easy to work with up until this point, so.
Thank you. And I continue, I definitely will continue that. But yeah, it's just a matter of if there's a conference or if you would like an individual appearance, we can work out those details and just go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, we just kind of had to give up on our conference because we couldn't get funding together, but we might be able to do something.
Even if it's just like an evening type situation where you come.
Would be very cool.
That would be neat. That would be very neat. I have a question for you regarding like women in the community, and I mean you're a woman in the community, and it can be very challenging, and you have zero fucks to give people who oppose you. Like you're unabashedly, this is who I am, deal with it. And it's very refreshing as another woman in, I guess technically I'm in the community too, even though this is the only visual way that I put myself out there. But just speaking to, there's some women that kind of burn out. And they kind of like, they burn bright for 6 months or so, and then, or a little bit longer, but then they just shut down or take a step back. And like, how has this taken its toll on you? Because I mean, you're still very visible. You're still very active.
Oh boy, it certainly has. Well, I'll tell you, because sometimes I have to wonder, like, why I still do this?
Yeah.
Like, why do I still do this shit? But I like many, like in many instances, the women often tend to be the backbone of most movements. The men often tend to get most of the credit while the women are doing the majority of the work. That has been the case within the Black church. It has been the case with, and I've seen it amongst in this community. And, it can be very difficult at times dealing with some very strong male personalities. And I have encountered many especially within the leadership and it can be very difficult when you have the males that are being that they are being promoted and being more highlighted more than women per se. Like, let's say you're Richard Dawkins and people are still holding up Sam Harris to a very high regard. There is just this tendency to hold up the men as the standard, which can be very, very, and I'm not saying that it isn't warranted for quite a few of them. But there are more of them who tend to get away with certain behaviors, or it's just ignored, in favor of, what they've been able to contribute to the community. And also there's that sense of patriarchy that just kind of goes beyond, or it's a part of the religious and cultural and societal baggage that the women are just supposed to, be basically the laborers. And, I've had to deal with that within, even within the Black atheist, sect or the segment of the community. Oh, absolutely. I've had to deal with, I still deal with, other especially Black atheist men who feel like, they should be the voices, that they should be the ones, or that they should be the default, to talk about the issues within the Black community, as well as being a Black atheist. Somehow, a woman can't do that. And it's amazing how you go from being a queen to a bitch, when you don't give them what they want. Yeah. And so, and for as far as me personally, I'm able to handle so many different things at once. That isn't always a good thing. Here we have. Yeah. I just left the job that I had been working for over 10 years while developing Black non-believers, while raising my family, and while doing all of this stuff. Yeah. And, luckily the terms had been favorable over these years, but still it is a lot to take on. But I think, being used to it, it's just something that I've been able to do. But, I'll be damned if you're going to take that, try to take that away from me, And sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to back me up here. I mean, oftentimes, this drives me nuts. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but I absolutely hate when men get credit for something that women get no credit for. Like, I'm thinking this woman at work brought her baby by the other day. She just had a 5-month-old baby, brought the baby by, and she's like gushing, "Oh, my husband is so amazing. He's holding the baby, and he's changing the baby, and he's rocking the baby." And I'm like, no, but he would say, "Oh, the mother is being so amazing. She's holding the baby and changing the baby." Like, fuck you. He's a dad. Yeah, he's fucking taking care of his fucking baby. Like, I didn't say this to her because she's a sleep-deprived new mom, but I was just like biting my tongue. And also I find, just as I'm a woman working in science, I find I have to get really good at saying, "I just fucking said that," right? Because it's always I say something and then a guy says it. "Oh, John, that was a great idea." I'm like, I just fucking said that.
Yes, and this is something this is a part of the subconscious thing. We do get that as well, not just as women, but also as a Black woman atheist. Yes. That some of what we do tends to be diminished. you know, and I can absolutely agree with that, you know, that, you know, so we could just say something, but then as soon as a man says it, oh, it's the best thing. And it's time for the same way we must challenge, you know, the same way we challenge white folks to check themselves on that privilege. It is time for the men to start checking themselves on that. And I challenge that for black, white, all men.
Yeah.
I challenge that because the black atheist men are guilty of that shit too. Now, I promise you they are.
Change the fucking diapers and you don't get a fucking medal.
Right. And start recognizing when it's like, oh shit, I don't think I should have done that. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, let's kind of, you know, rethink this for a moment. And I don't think it should be that hard of a thing to do, you know, because, you know, it's like, yeah, people will get tired when, you know, and often organizing can be, it's a thankless thing to do.
Yes.
You know, it's thankless. People often don't. I wasn't even expecting that things would take off the way they did. You know, I got involved because I knew it was there was a need for it. You know, that there was something, there was a problem. It needed to be resolved. We needed to work on it. Did I think that it was going to get to this point? Not necessarily. It wasn't something that I intended on. I mean, I'm glad that it's here, and I'm glad that people can take away something from, you know, what I've been able to do and from my presence here. You have some who are just looking to be superstars, and I'm like, wow, that, you know, how far does that get you, you know, in this, you know, in this community here? It's like, it isn't that you can't get the visibility, but if you're thinking it's just going to happen overnight, that's just not how it works. And so it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes dealing with bullshit along the way. The question becomes a matter of how much can you deal with? And I will say that my ability to deal with it over the years has been what has kept me in this movement. But my tolerance for certain types of bullshit, I've had to learn how to manage that very quickly. And there are some people who didn't like it. There were some folks who didn't like it, but you know, I'd say too bad. You know, so I thank my ability to manage, that my ability to deal with people, because that was my day job. You know, it was in hospitality. It was in customer service. It was also management. So those skills have served me well. In navigating the organization and the community at large.
Good answer.
Thank you. And that was probably a long roundabout way of getting there, but I guess.
No. It was great. It was really great. So much to think about.
Absolutely. And these are things that aren't going to change overnight, but that it really isn't as hard to do as some people may think it is. You know, it's a matter of, there's a lot of self-reflection that as a community and as people that we need to do. Learning is a lifelong process. It doesn't stop.
No.
And I think that the more people take that approach, and also if they really stop to think about how they deal with people and not just think about things from their perspective, their own perspective rather, but just looking at things from other people's point of view, even if you don't agree with it, there's nothing wrong with understanding it. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. You know, most of us, when we're disagreeing or we're arguing, people aren't, you know, hearing, they're not listening to understand, they're listening to respond. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's something that will be resolved anytime soon. You know, it's just a matter of hopefully not becoming so consumed with it that you just get burned out altogether. It can be very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
So what's next? Like, what are the next steps?
The next steps, I really need to start. My organization isn't different from other organizations in trying to retain good volunteers and good organizers. We go through those pits and valleys as well. As a matter of fact, I just caught some grief from someone who stepped down. I wrote about this on Patreon just before we started here. I tend to try to be very patient with my organizers, and I try to be patient with people, period. But I also have my breaking point. I have my limits. Mm-hmm. And I try to deal with people as diplomatically as possible. But when it becomes impossible to do that, then I have to make certain decisions. And some people just don't like that. But, I have to say sometimes, too bad. But, the next steps are to continue to grow the organization. We're up to our 11th affiliate, a chapter within the United States. We just started one in the Cincinnati area.
That's awesome.
We will try to go wherever we are needed, and also where we think that there will be a good presence, and also to work within the broader secular community, because we encourage coalition building. We encourage working with other organizations. We are affiliated and partnered with other atheist and secular organizations. And so there will just be more of that. Working and looking to see, I've made it my personal mission to try and look for more church and state separation violations. If there is something that I see that isn't right, I'm going to make sure I challenge it a whole lot more than I have been before. And so really just continuing to do more of what I have been doing, because I think many people thought that Black Nonbelievers was my full-time job. It certainly has felt like it over these past 7 years. So now, there is the opportunity to, become more immersed and deeply involved with the atheist and secular community. I mean, I do serve on a couple of boards. I have worked on a number of projects, and so I will just continue to, to work with whatever comes my way. I'm excited about the July edition of the Humanist magazine, thehumanist.com. Y'all should look out for a cover story on that.
Nice.
So, I'll kind of, I haven't thrown out any hints about that, but yeah, if you look out for the upcoming edition of the Humanist magazine, you'll see some faces on the cover. So look out for that.
Sweet, we will for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to anything, almost any and everything that comes my way. I have the opportunity now to do it more, especially as it pertains to the community. So that's just a sort of a peek into what's happening.
Sounds pretty exciting.
When I was looking for links for the show notes, I found a lot of stuff about you, but I didn't find any like much writing by you. Do you have stuff that you have on the internet out there?
I'm not sure if you've ever seen there's one particular article that I wrote for CNN, Confessions of a Black Atheist.
Yes, I did find that one.
Yeah. So most of the writing I do now is on my Patreon. I am a good writer, but most of my work has been, producing like visible content, right. Speaking and interviews. And so writing can be, I really haven't had the time to write as much as some other people within the community, because most of my work has been organizing, right. Actually getting, putting on events, putting things together. And, I've written 4 articles, I've written for other, writers or for other pieces, But as far as my own writing, yeah, there isn't as much out there, probably as should be. But I've been featured in some books. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, The Ebony Exodus Project by Candace Gorham. I have a chapter. Yeah, I have a chapter in her book that was released in 2013. It's an anthology as well as it's a book on Black women leaving religion. So that might be good to pick up. I've written for that, and so there is some literature that I have out there, some written content. It's not as much as the video content, it's not as much as the organizational content, but there's some out there.
Very cool. So I guess the best place to find information about you is that your Patreon, you think?
Patreon.com// Mandisa Latifa. Because I put some adult content in there, you would have to type in that link directly. But most of the information on me can be found if you type in Black Nonbelievers. It is associated with Black Nonbelievers as well. So there's a lot of stuff there you can find, on our website, blacknonbelievers.org, or at blacknonbelievers.wordpress.com. And if you just type in Mandisa Thomas, you'll be able to find that. So, or Black Nonbelievers. So yeah, more of, I like the Patreon because it gives people an opportunity to see how my brain works, and also it also takes you into my experiences, some things that I've had a pretty colorful experience or a pretty colorful life. There are some things that I haven't written about yet. I mean, I have been asked to write a book. And I know there's one in me that I need to just get out. But you can, and also, I'm on my Facebook. I'm friends with you, Cory and Angela. Mm-hmm. There's some things that I tend to, and I like engaging people. I like being able to, I like personally responding to folks. I'm not one of those people who I put something out there and then just leave it, to just remain, a free for all or whatever. Yeah. So, I do like that personal touch, that is a part of my activism, being able to engage people on a level that is relatable, because that's also another part that is missing in the community. Definitely. People who are able to relate to what so many others go through. Mm-hmm. And as atheists, there are so, as women, as atheists, and so I am happy to say that I can relate to almost some of everyone in this community. And so that's, that's a good thing.
Well, it translates well. Definitely. And I mean, it's apparent that you care about your fellow humans and the way that you engage with even just on Facebook and stuff. It's just, it's clear and it's refreshing to see that for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I can't say that it's successful with everyone.
No.
We're never gonna please everyone.
No, that's true.
There are people who piss me off too. So I mean, and I just have to get that out there because I think there are some people who don't think I get upset or that I'm not supposed to be upset about stuff. But it happens. I tend to be one of those. Hey, as long as we're able to, follow the simple, basic rules of communication, we should be okay. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with people, that isn't always the case.
That's true.
It's like, oh gosh, really?
It's true.
All right, on. I think we'll close this out. When you write your book, we will definitely have you on to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you. I am proud to say that I've been featured in a new release called Once Unspoken by Marissa Alexa McCool.
Yes.
Who's from the Inciting Incident podcast. She released her book on primarily women of color and trans women who've had their, who have been, it's sort of a take on the vagina monologues. And so, I contributed an entry for that book. So I recommend picking that up if you can. So, but yes, hopefully in the near future, I will be able to, sit down and actually produce the book and books that I should be writing. So, hopefully we'll be able to put that into motion soon.
That's awesome. We look forward to it for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We'll close this section out.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all
so
very
much.
much once again for having me.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll talk to you
Have
soon.
a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Before we go, I guess, I could listen to her talk all day.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Her
I think
voice.
that's the quietest I've ever been during an interview.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
not a
I was just
word.
We were so well behaved.
And every
I have
time
one
she took a break, I'm like, I have to have a question, but I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Like,
It was very, very, very good.
great interview. All right. This is where we close the Skeptic Studio. All right, Angela, what do you got for us?
I didn't want to read another Chuck Palahniuk reference excerpt, even though I really appreciate his writing. But in light of today's events, I decided I would try and find an Anthony Bourdain excerpt online of some kind, because he was found dead in his hotel room in France this morning. And it's kind of devastating. I don't know. He was a cool guy. He was kind of rough around the edges and didn't have a perfect childhood / adulthood life in general. And he still kind of opened our eyes to food and culture, and it was almost incessant in his support of how food can bring us together. And I think that's in a world of shitlords and idiots online. Trump. I think that's so. I don't know. I could read this. It would be a long article to read, I think, or the excerpt, I guess. So we could maybe read some of it.
You got as much time as you need.
Wow. All right, because I found an excerpt of his book called Kitchen Confidential.
We only have an hour 44, actually.
Only an hour 44. Well,
I suspect you'll beat an hour 44.
it won't be that long. You can stop me if you want to. I'll read the whole thing. I don't know. Okay, so here we go. August of our first summer in France was spent in Le Test-sur-Mer, a tiny oyster village on the Bassin d'Arcachon in the Gironde. Lisa, I'm not really good at French, but
I'm not good at French names either, like France French.
it's hard.
It's hard. Sorry. Continue your book.
It's okay. You can just fall asleep, have a nap. We stayed with my aunt, Tante Jean, and my uncle Gustave, in the same white stuccoed house where my father had summered as a boy. Tante Jean was a frumpy, bespectacled, slightly smelly old woman. Uncle Gustave, a geezer in coveralls and beret who smoked hand-rolled cigarettes until they disappeared on the tip of his tongue. Little had changed about Le Test in the years since my father had vacationed there. The neighbors were still all oyster fishermen. Their families still raised rabbits and grew tomatoes in their backyards. Houses had 2 kitchens, an inside one and an outdoor fish kitchen. There was a hand pump for drinking water from a well and an outhouse by the rear of the garden. My brother and I were reasonably happy there. The beaches were warm. There were lizards to hunt down and exterminate with readily available petards, which are like...
That's what you hoist people by.
Exactly.
It's weird. I think it actually used to be a form of explosive pot.
Yep. Firecrackers.
Oh,
They used
well then.
firecrackers, which one could buy legally over the counter. There was a forest within walking distance where an actual hermit lived, and my brother and I spent hours there spying on him from the underbrush. By now I could read comic books in French, and of course I was eating. Really eating. Murky brown soup de poisson, tomato salad, moule marinière, poulet basquez. We were only a few miles from the Basque country. We made day trips to Cap Ferret, a wild, deserted, and breathtakingly magnificent Atlantic beach with rolling waves, taking along baguettes and saucissons, and wheels of cheese, wine, and Evian. Bottled water was at that time unheard of back home. A few miles west was Lac Cazot, a freshwater lake where my brother and I could rent pedalo watercraft. We ate gaufres, delicious hot waffles covered in whipped cream and powdered sugar. The two hot songs of that summer on the Cazot jukebox were Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum and These Boots Were Made for Walkin' by Nancy Sinatra. The French played those two songs over and over again, the music punctuated by the sonic booms from French Air Force jets that would swoop over the lake on their way to a nearby bombing range. When our neighbor, Monsieur Saint-Jour, the oyster fisherman, invited my family out on his oyster boat, I was enthusiastic. At 6 a.m, we boarded Monsieur Saint-Jour's small wooden vessel with our picnic baskets and our sensible footwear. He was a crusty old bastard, dressed like my uncle in ancient denim coveralls, espadrille, and beret. He had a leathery, tanned, and wind-blown face, hollow cheeks, and the tiny broken blood vessels on his nose and cheeks that everyone seemed to have from drinking so much of the local Bordeaux. We putt-putted out to a buoy, marking his underwater Oscar Oyster Park, a fenced-off section of the bay bottom, and we sat and sat and sat in the roaring August sun, waiting for the tide to go out. The idea was to float the boat over stockaded fence walls, then sit there as the boat slowly sank with a water level until it rested on the basin floor. At this point, Monsieur Saint-Jour would rake the oysters, collect a few good specimens for sale in port, and remove any parasites that might be endangering his crop. There was, I recall, still about 2 feet of water left to go before the hull of the boat settled on dry ground and we could walk about the park. We'd already polished off the brie and baguettes, but I was still hungry and characteristically said so. Monsieur Saint-Jour, on hearing this, as if challenging his American passengers, inquired in his thick Girondin accent if any of us would care to try an oyster. My parents hesitated. I doubt they'd realized they might have actually to eat one of the raw, slimy things we were currently floating over. My little brother recoiled in horror. But I, in the proudest moment of my young life, stood up smartly, grinning with defiance, and volunteered to be the first. And in that unforgettable, sweet moment, that one moment still more alive for me than so many of the other firsts that followed, first sex, first joint, first day in high school, first published book, I attained glory. Monsieur Saint-Jour beckoned me over to the gunwale, where he leaned over, reached down until his head nearly disappeared underwater, and emerged holding a single, silt-encrusted oyster, huge and irregularly shaped, in his rough claw-like fist. With a snubby, rust-covered oyster knife, he popped the thing open and handed it to me. Everyone watching now, my little brother shrinking away from this glistening, vaguely sexual-looking object, still dripping and nearly alive. I took it in my hand, tilted the shell back into my mouth as instructed by the now beaming Monsieur Saint-Jour, and with one bite and a slurp, wolfed it down. It tasted of seawater, of brine and flesh, and somehow of the future. Everything was different now. Everything. I'd not only survived, I'd enjoyed. This, I knew, was the magic I had now, until now, been only dimly and spitefully aware of. I was hooked. My parents' shudders, my little brother's expression of unrestrained revulsion, and amazement only reinforced the sense I had, somehow, become a man. I had had an adventure, tasted forbidden fruit and everything that followed in my life. The food, the long and often stupid and self-destructive chase for the next thing, whether it was drugs or sex or some other new sensation, would all stem from this moment. I'd learned something, viscerally, instinctively, spiritually, even in some small precursive way, sexually. And there was no turning back. The genie was out of the bottle. My life as a cook and as a chef had begun. I'll stop there.
That's pretty cool.
It's fucking creepy and awesome and sad and heartbreaking.
All right. On to something a little more mundane. We've got some listener feedback. After the episode, this is all on Twitter. After the episode on incels, at Keith Timber said, funny, my brother is named Chad. And funnily enough, he's the guy that walks in and steals the preacher's wife with a couple's words.
Oh.
And then, after the episode Nutsies Not Nazis, he said, the base we were talking about, the Stargate thing, NORAD, is in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he says, obviously we aren't facing the Gould, or Gould.
The Goa'uld. Goa'uld.
Whatever.
Depends which character you're talking to.
But the place is here. Or are we, he says. Yeah. And then after the newest release, We're Intellectually Pure, at Jesse Hoffner said, I'm pretty sure that if we went to high school together, we'd have been friends. I love the Columbine conversation. I got called into the principal's office shortly after Columbine because of how I dressed. Someone said they thought that I was going to shoot up the school.
I can relate.
What did they do when they brought you into the office? Were they just like, please don't do that or something?
Don't kill people, okay?
That's what they were like to me. They're like, are you going to kill people?
Did they really?
Because you're totally going to tell them, right?
Are you gonna bring a gun to school? Yeah, because I have access to a gun.
Well, if you did, would you say it?
But if you had, you would have, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, yes, that's exactly what I was going to do.
Oh, thank God somebody asked.
Thank you for asking.
Thank goodness you brought it to my attention.
The plan wasn't clear till just now.
And at OV_Sage said, this is a great podcast.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
That's
I
it.
didn't know nobody listened
Kind
to it. They
words.
just didn't
This
listen
is a
to
great
it then, right?
podcast.
I mean, how did...
That should be our
It's great. It's huge.
Really, it's rude to write a review with a
tremendous podcast.
Okay, we got some YouTube comments as well.
Bring it on!
On our Jordan Peterson is an idiot video. Susan Nunez answered in the affirmative that he is in fact dumber than a box of rocks. So, on our Side Thorn and Granny conspiracy video, Angry Black Gamer said, you're lost as shit and y'all know nothing of what's going on. Just STFU.
Citation, please. Prove us wrong.
Show me, please.
Disagree with us and
Y'all.
show us how we are wrong.
Y'all know nothing.
We're lost as shit.
Most people know where this shit is.
Either our searchlight.
Either it's internal or it's in the toilet.
On the newest video, Jordan Peterson and the Intellectual Dark Web, we got 4 comments that I are quite positive.
Ooh. Even better.
Michael McElroy said, wow, 2 thumbs down already. Must have triggered some Jordan B. Peterson fans. Randy Lamonda said, great discussion, folks. Lido Honor said, OMG, Lisa making Jordan Peterson is hilarious. I'm dying. Because when you were like...
Oh, I was like pretending to be
Yeah.
him.
Except you were using like the pretentious frat boy voice. It was pretty fantastic.
My Jordan Peterson impersonation is spot on.
Yeah,
Spot on.
And the Utah Outcast said, psh, 4chan. More like 4chan. It's all about 8chan. Great click, guys. That's where the toxic shit is, I guess.
Yep.
It's just like orders of magnitude.
Yeah, that's right. We got a new patron, Janet Yoder. I hope I said that right. Y-E-U-T-T-E-R? U-R? E-R. T-T-E-R.
Uter?
Uter? Janet Uter?
Uter?
Yeah. Thank you, Janet, for supporting the show.
Sorry.
Either way,
Sorry
you are
about the
awesome.
pronunciation.
And thank you for not supporting it now. After
Sorry about the pronunciation.
If you could send us the way to pronounce it correctly,
She typed in her credit card info wrong. She's like, oh.
All right. Thank you to our top patrons. Bassett, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Bob Glenn, Daryl Goosen, Aaron Young, William Driver, and Positively Skeptical. If you want to be a top patron, then you can go to patreon.com/brainstormpodcast and contribute. Reviews. On Facebook, Michael McElroy gave us 5 stars and said, "Skepticism done right, with empathy and good humor. Their discussions are always fun and they've had some really excellent guests."
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's cool. No new iTunes reviews, but Facebook is better anyway.
Wider user base.
All right, plug your stuff. Anybody got stuff?
Kind of. Not really my event, but my group's part of it, the CFI Regina.
Okay.
We're walking in support with the Pride Parade coming up a week from tomorrow.
Cool.
So yeah, if there's any of our Regina listeners who want to be in the parade, get in touch with me on Facebook. I realize it's a little hard because I don't have my phone here handy, but
Your phone wouldn't help you.
Yeah, it's not my phone, that isn't my laptop.
Right.
I'd just like to say to the people that contributed to the Shift to Reason conference, thank you very much for your generous donations. We are very sad that we kind of had to pull the plug on it because of not having enough funds and just having to choose to focus our efforts a little elsewhere. We still want to do something like that in the future.
It'd be cool.
Drum up some support, but we are very grateful to the people that contributed, and it means a lot that people that we've never really met in real life are willing to support something like that. It's very cool.
Yep. And I feel pretty terrible about not going through with it or not following through with it. Like, that's kind of one of those things that I really wanted to get going, but we just couldn't do it.
Conferences are hard, though. I mean, and we don't have that much. That's the thing. Like, even after the conference was done, the first one that we had, there was talk of, well, there was a bunch of people that didn't even think we could have pulled that one off.
Right.
And it was really
including
stressful.
us.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we managed to do it. And I mean, I think that we need to count that as a victory and count that as a positive thing. And I mean, if we bring it back, we bring it back. And even if we do it on a smaller scale or for a shorter period of time or some kind of speaker series or whatever, but I think it was a positive thing, and I think it really helped.
It just seems very difficult to get something like that off the ground.
Yeah. If you were independently wealthy and had 50 grand just sitting around, you could totally do it.
Wealthy donor, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sugar daddy.
If you were a sugar daddy, if you had a sugar daddy or sugar mama.
But middle class means
sugar non-binary.
Living check to check. So
off of credit. And
Yep.
So none of that works.
I don't have something to plug, but I just wanted to say, if we have any listeners in Minneapolis, do you think we have any?
It's possible.
It's possible. I'm going to be down there first week in July for a whole week.
Cool.
So I'd love to connect with somebody down there and maybe get a local tour guide.
That would be amazing.
That'd be cool.
Neato.
So if you want to connect with me, just email David at RomanEmpireStudios.com.
And you can meet awesome Dave in person.
You can meet the amazing Dave in person.
That's right.
And
Bachelor Dave.
I'd like to. I'm going to be there for a week, so I mean, it'd be
That's
great
not the sort of contact he wants there, Angela.
No. I'll be there. I'll be there with my
Bachelor
family.
degree Dave.
Yeah.
Actually, but I would love to learn about the city itself. I always, my favorite thing to do when I go to a city is learn about its like social problems, which is kind of funny, but that's like my favorite thing to learn. I don't know.
You're such a social work nerd.
I know, it's kind of funny.
I know somebody who lives there, and she does stuff with like art and like people in hospitals and stuff.
There you go. You should hook me up.
Sure.
Hook me up.
She's older.
Not as a bachelor. She's
happily married.
As a BSW.
She's happily married. I used to listen to her podcast back in the day.
I'm pretty happily married too, I think.
Hey.
I'm pretty happily married, I think.
And
I think
people
that
that
sums it up. That's a good. That's very honest. I
mean, you might know your half of the marriage is happy.
Can I just say that Ali Wong's comedy special is a must listen?
Oh my god, I listen so good.
It just
so
like
good.
Hard Knock Wife is what it's called. So just check it out because it talks about marriage too, and I think it's appropriate that I bring that up again.
Cool. All right. For everything else, you can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to our financial supporters, Stephanie Zach, the Utah Outcasts. Hey, now let's hit that outro music.
I was about to do it. Before you. I didn't think you were going to tell me.
Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Bob Glenn, Destin doesn't suck that much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical, Rob, Julie, Chris, and Larry. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast.
Squirrels can be skeptics too.
That's right. Or you can go buy stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. You can join us every second week, except we only have one more left before the summer break. Our next show is on June 22nd, and our guest will be Matthew Lee Loftus, a.k.a. The Credible Hulk.
Neat.
Thanks again to Mandisa for joining us. You can find more of her stuff at blacknonbelievers.wordpress.com, so make sure to check that out. Thank you, Dave, for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from Embrace the Void podcast for doing the voiceover. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Camper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads, and thanks to Jason Camo for the outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, or thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. For live listeners, stick around for the after show. Some of us might stick around. Brainstormafterhours.com. Listen to the bonus content before it goes Patreon only. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.